Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Allie's Book Nook. Today I have to share with you spoiler-free reviews of the 13 books that I read in June 2026. And sorry if you hear my cat making noise, that's just what he does whenever I decide to film. Before we get into it, let me break down a few stats for the month for you. So as I said, 13 books. That's 2 less than I read in May, but more page count. So as far as pages go, in June, I did read 5,304 pages. My average time to finish a book was 2 days. This is all information that I get off of Storygraph, which is a free book tracking app, which I use, as well as Fable. That's another great one. So of the 13 books, one of them I only did physical, and the rest I all did with audio, with 2 of them being ebooks and the rest of them being physical that I read in tandem with audio. So I finished the month with 80 books year to date, which means I'm due to hit my 100 book goal by the end of next month, but I should be able to hit 150 at this rate, which would be awesome. My top genres for June were, in this order: thriller, horror, mystery, crime, classic, sci-fi, memoir, and historical. And my favorite and my least favorite, you'll find out when we get into them here. So yeah, let's dive in. Actually, my favorite book of the month is the first book that I read, and one of my favorite books of the year. And that is The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. I love this book. 5+ stars. This was so good. So let me see here. I started The Reformatory actually in May. I started it May 30th and I finished it 6/3. So it is a bigger book. So it did take me a little bit longer. It's 570 pages and 21 hours on audio at 1.0 speed, but it is so worth it. So this was published by Saga Press, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster, in 2023. This is a historical horror book, which I haven't read a lot of those, but I definitely am intrigued to read more in that kind of subgenre. I paid $10 for this at Barnes & Noble because I got it half off, and then it was free to listen to through my Libby app through the library. So the main characters or subject is the Gracetown home for boys in the South during Jim Crow era, and we also have important characters are the Haints, the spirits in this book. So this is somewhat based on a true story, not the paranormal part, but the author's great uncle. He was put into a reformatory for boys in the South during the 30s. Yeah, and his the place that he was at was called the Dozier School for Boys, and that was in Marianna, Florida. And that was in 1937, and he was 15 years old when he died in that institution, which so sad, but it did inspire the author to write this story. So this was so good. It wasn't a fluffy book, and there are parts in it that can be really hard to get through. And so it is something that you might need to set down a little bit along the way, but it was very well written, and I just really connected with the characters. So in this story, we start out, like I said, in Florida in Jim Crow days. Does it say the year here? I think this actually took place in the 50s, but there's a 12-year-old boy named Robbie Stevens Jr., and he basically gets into a scuffle with a white kid trying to defend his sister. He's got an older teenage sister, and because of that, he is unjustly, the punishment did not fit the crime, but he was sent to this Gracetown School for Boys for 6 months. and that is a horrible place, an institution of horrors. So he gets there. There's a lot of just bad stuff going on there that is allowed to go on, perpetrated by the adults primarily. And it says here on the back, Robbie has a talent for seeing ghosts or haints. But what was once a comfort to him after the loss of his mother becomes a window into the truth of what happens at the reformatory. And boys have gone missing from this institution. And so basically, because of his talent or ability, I guess, to see these haints, we're able to kind of pull the veil back and see from their perspective or he's trying to show them, they're trying to show him, I guess, some of the atrocities that have happened there. There's one of my cats. But at the same time, his sister is doing everything she can on the outside to get him out. And so we do have kind of dual storylines there with everything going on inside the reformatory as well as everything his sister's doing to try to get him out. So it says here, the reformatory is a hallucinatory, haunting, terrifying, and moving work of historical fiction. And that is a quote by S.A. Cosby. I would agree with that. This is going to stick with you. And haunting, not just because of the paranormal element, but just the actual history of what went down in places like these. And so, let's see, what did I say here in my notes? I really loved the haints, the ghost element in this book, and it sort of reminded me a little bit of like Ask for Andrea, in that they're not like spooky bad spirits. They serve a purpose to try to move the story into a more positive direction, I guess. But this was very powerful. It's going to stick with me for a long time. And this is actually a new favorite of mine. Yeah, I love this book. It is something I would reread at some point. And it's definitely in the top books of the year for me. So this is my first Tana Reeve Dew book. I think it's probably the one she's most well known for, but she has several other horror books out there that I definitely would like to get my hands on. So I highly recommend this book. Don't let the size intimidate you. I mean, just go into it knowing it's not popcorny. It is a little heavy, but it's hauntingly beautiful, and just, it's okay to take your time with this one because it's gonna stick with you. So yes, The Reformatory. That was a great way to start out the month. Like I said, favorite book of the month. Okay, so after that, I was ready for something a little lighter, more popcorny, and a friend of mine, her and I did like a book buddy reading together of this at the same time, and that is The Divorce by Frida McFadden. So I did this on audio and through the ebook. So I started this on the 3rd, and I finished it on the 4th. It was a quick, fast-paced read. This is Frida's newest book. It came out actually May 26th, so like a week before I read it. Published by Poison Pen. It is a domestic thriller. I signed back up for the Kindle Unlimited again. I had canceled it, but they were doing a special now where it's 99 cents a month for 3 months. So I have a calendar reminder to cancel it, but for now I have it. So I was able to get that free through Kindle Unlimited, as well as the audio free through Hoopla through my library. So main character subject, I'd say it's a messy divorce with twisty drama. This is 388 pages, and it's 8 hours on audio at 1.0. So like I said, this is her newest release, and it's quick, short, fluffy, short chapters. But looking back on it a month later, it's not very memorable. And that's part of the problem. I was gonna do a mid-month reading wrap up, but I had like 4 books that were in a series, so I was like, I don't know if I have enough to talk about. I probably should have just talked about this when it was fresher in my mind. Because yeah, it wasn't very memorable, but it's basically this lady, um she thinks she has like the perfect marriage, and then all of a sudden her husband like gets weird and says he wants a divorce, and turns out there is another woman, and drama ensues. I don't know. I don't want to say too much. The female main character, she kind of becomes obsessed with the whole situation and the other woman, and there's some twisty domestic thriller drama. um it wasn't earth shattering, but it wasn't bad. I feel like it is one of her better books, but again, like, it wasn't that memorable. I did guess a small part of the end, but not all of it. There were several twists at the end. And then, okay, so the prologue kind of shows you the ending. There's a big situation that's going to happen at the end, but you don't know like whose voice it is in the prologue, how it's going to all come together. At the beginning of the book, she says that there's a content warning. There's a link in the beginning of the book to go to the content warnings, which is good because then it doesn't spoil it right there, like some books I've experienced recently. So what did I say here? I gave it a 4.0 after I read it, right after I read it, just because it was just like enjoyable, quick ride. 3.5 for writing, 3.75 for strength of characters, but plot and overall 4. Looking back, I think that was kind of generous. Like I said, not very memorable, whereas like the Reformatory, that's a story that's going to stick with me. But Frida's books aren't necessarily meant to be, movie novels that are going to stick with you forever. So it was good for a popcorn thriller, but yeah, nothing earth-shattering. Okay, so the next book I have here is the beginning of a series of 4 books. And this book is Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. So this hit my book bingo for a book recommended by a friend. My best friend has been telling me that I need to read this book for years now. And June was her birthday month. So now that I have all 4 of them from like little free libraries and stuff, I thought I'm going to do this. And because it's her birthday month, it'll be a fun time to do it. So I did read all 4 of these, but the first one is Red Dragon. This is like the Silence of the Lambs Hannibal Lecter series. There's movies. I think there was a show. I'm kind of late to the game because I've never seen any of the movies or anything. I'd been waiting to read the books. But I started this on the 5th of June and I finished it on the 6th. This first one was really pretty fast paced, and it is an older book. So it's written by Thomas Harris, published by Dell Publishing in 1981. So yeah, this book came out before I did. I paid $4 for this at the Book Exchange, a local used bookstore, and then it was free to listen to on Hoopla. This is a crime. Well, it's in the horror section of the bookstore, but I would consider it more like crime mystery. But this is where we get to meet Hannibal Lecter for the first time and to catch a serial killer. So it's 454 pages, 11 hours and 47 minutes on audio, basically 12 hours. So this was really good. This is, like I said, it takes place early 80s, so they didn't have DNA technology. And so I feel like this book probably wouldn't happen modern day because they talk about, there was blood left at the scene at one situation. It's like, okay, well, end of story. Now it's not a, 4-part series, but they knew about blood type, but that's about it. Fingerprinting stuff. The cops there weren't really computers, so there's notepad and pen taking notes and their little portable recorders. And it was kind of fun to like go back to that time, but also like I don't think this could have happened in the same way in modern times. But okay, so in this story we have Hannibal Lecter is incarcerated. He was an infamous serial killer, psychologist, psychiatrist who was also a serial killer slash cannibal. And he's in jail, prison, and there is a different serial killer out out on the actively unaliving people, and there's a cop that basically relies on Hannibal's advice, I guess, to find this serial killer. So let's see here. This preceded Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal. Harris introduced unforgettable character Dr. Hannibal Lecter and Will Graham, the FBI man who hunted Lecter down. So the guy that they're trying to catch is the Red Dragon. That is the active serial killer. And yeah, this was good. It was definitely had some disturbing scenes that yeah. So all of these books definitely have some disturbing scenes. This one was not the most disturbing out of the series, but yeah, especially for back then. I didn't really like the police procedural stuff as much as the rest of it, but there wasn't really too much in here, so that was okay. So I gave this 4.25 stars overall. I think this was my second favorite book in the series. 4.25 for overall and quality writing, and then strength of characters and plot were both 4.5. So this was a good book. I think you could read this and then decide if you wanted to proceed with the series, but this is a good place to start. I mean, this is the order that they came out. Maybe not the movies, but the order of publication. So I'm glad that I read that, especially because it is one of my friend's favorite books. So for my 70th book of the year, I read the next book in the series, and that is The Silence of the Lambs, which is probably the most famous, and especially because of the movie. And here we have the movie cover. This says 25 cents, but I don't really know how much I paid for it, but you can see it's a very old edition. I started this on 6/6 and I finished it on 6/8. This was published in 1988, so 7 years after the first one. Again, I'd call it crime mystery, but it's often classified as horror. I'm going to assume that this is what I paid 25 cents used, but I'm not really sure. Plus, it was free to listen to through Libby. So here you do get to know Hannibal a little bit more, and he's trying to help a different cop catch a different serial killer. So this is 367 pages and 11 hours long. As we get into these more, I probably can't give too much away, but because it's all, a series. But yeah, Hannibal is still incarcerated, and now we have a different law enforcement agent, and that is Claire Starling, who is played by Jodie Foster in the movie. And there's a different serial killer on the loose, Buffalo Bill, and he's basically giving insight to help them to find this Buffalo Bill. And I guess I didn't realize there was a whole other side story from like the movie. I thought it was just about him and her, but yeah, Buffalo Bill, he is the current active serial killer in this story. And this was fast-paced. It was graphic. It was the shortest book in the series, I think. Definitely shorter than the first one. But it was graphic. I did like this slightly better than the first, actually. First was good. I like this slightly better. I do want to watch all the movies at some point, but I don't. That's a struggle for me to sit down and watch a movie or whatever. So some point I'll get through them. Because I knew that the movie characters are pretty famous for this, I did picture them when I was reading the book. A lot of times I don't really like, unless it's like an actor like that, it's hard. I don't really get like graphic visualizations of like faces and stuff. I don't know. Do you guys do that when you read? Do you like really picture someone, or is it just more almost kind of like, for me, it's kind of like not really a clear visualization, almost kind of like when you're having a dream. That sounds really weird, and this is like off topic, but unless it's like a character that I already am picturing, like this, or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, you're going to picture Jack Nicholson, that kind of thing. Usually it's not as detailed in my mind though. But anyway, going off topic here, yeah, so the meaning of the title, you do come across that later in the book, and it's not really a big part of the story, but it's interesting that that is what was picked up on and chosen for the title. I did really enjoy this overall. Part of the history of the story did happen in an area somewhat local to me, which was surprising, and I did enjoy that. But I felt like after I read this, I was going to need a palate cleanser. After reading these two books back to back, I was like, I think I need something a little lighter. I gave this a 4.5 star rating overall. So first one was 4.25, this was 4.5. All across the board, except strength of characters, I did do 4.75. Yeah, so that is the second one, probably the most famous one, The Silence of the Lambs. I would recommend that. You could read it alone. I would recommend Red Dragon first, but you probably could read it as a standalone. So like I said, after that, I needed a little bit of a palate cleanser, and so I read another Frida book, and that is The Surrogate Mother by Frida McFadden. This is a little bit older of a book, but they are making it into a screen adaptation, I think a movie. So I wanted to read it before that comes out. And I did a buddy read again with the same friend with this one. I started it on the 9th and I finished it on the 10th. Poison Pen. This was published in 2018, and I would call this a psychological or domestic thriller. Kindle Unlimited is where I got that, and also it was free on Hoopla to listen to. So this is about the main character subject. I said it's unhinged characters and a surrogate mother. We have Abby, Sam, and Monica are some of like the main characters in here that I wrote down. 341 pages. It's 8 hours on audio at 1.0 speed. This was my 9th Frida McFadden read. And I mean, she's not my favorite, but she's always good for like something that you just don't really want to have to think too hard about, and you just want to be entertained. One thing that, okay, so again, looking back, I don't really remember a lot of the story. But it's basically about this lady and her husband are unable to have kids on their own, so they were going to adopt. That fell through. They're looking for a surrogate mother, possibly. When the female main character's coworker says, well, I'll do it. I'll be your surrogate. And they go along with it. And it seems like a good idea, but of course it really wasn't. One thing that really annoyed me in this book was the female main character kept saying how like hot her husband was, and oh, he's so hot, he's so fine, blah, blah, blah. And it was annoying, and it felt really like immature. You know, it's not like they were just dating and she had the butterflies for him, but she just went on and on about like, oh, he's so hot and stuff. And it's like, we're not in middle school anymore. Like, and we get it. Okay. He's good looking. We get it. Let's move on. And Frida did that with Enzo in the Housemaid's books too, which annoyed me. But yeah, same kind of thing here. There was a possible big twist in the epilogue, which I did like that. had to look it up for some theories, but I did like that. It was a really fun time and fast paced while I was reading it. Quick, good palate cleanser, but again, nothing earth shattering. And I didn't like this as much as The Divorce. I gave this 3.75 overall. Quality writing, 3.5. Strength of characters, 3.5. And plot and overall, 3.75. So you know there's going to be a good twist in there. So after that, I was back on the Hannibal Lecter train, and I read Hannibal. This is the third book in the series. I read this from 610 to 612, and this came out in 1999, so quite a while after the second one. The second one was 88. This came out 11 years later in 1999. Published by Dell Random House. Same genre. I got this free through a little free library. I know it says $1.50, but I'm pretty sure this one came from a little free library. Last fall when I turned 40, I did 40 for 40, where I went to 40 little free libraries that week. And that was how I got the rest of this collection. But yeah, this is basically about Hannibal. So without giving away too much of the first two, we follow Hannibal in this one. This is the third out of the fourth book in the series. It's the longest so far. It's 546 pages and 12 and a half hours on audio. This was my least favorite. I did not like this, basically because of the ending. But in this we have another serial killer who isn't necessarily active, but he's not incarcerated or anything. And something had happened to him where he has it's inhibited his ability to speak clearly. And so when I was listening to this on audio, the way that the narrator did his voice, I mean, it was hard to understand because it was like someone that had like a severe lisp, I guess. And at first it was kind of cool because that's probably how he would sound, but then it got annoying to where it was hard to follow, and I'd have to go back and read it in the physical book, and I didn't like that. So they took that too far. But there are some pretty messed up and disturbing things in this book. There is a new fear unlocked of a certain animal I have now after reading this. If you've read this, you probably know what I'm talking about. But basically, let's see, what do I have in my notes here? They used some outdated language or slang, which kind of came across in the first couple books, which would be inappropriate today. I don't think that kind of stuff would necessarily be in here today, but this book did not need to be this long. It was more of like a lot of word salad. It did not need to be this long. Probably could have been at least 100 to maybe even 200 pages shorter. But the reason that I didn't like this book was because of the ending. I hated the ending of this so much. I hated it. It did not go with the rest of the series so far. It just was way out in left field, and it, like I said, it just was it didn't mesh with the rest of the story at all. Now the movie, I hear, is different. The movie has a different ending, which sounds like something much more reasonable, and I would have liked a lot better. But I guess the actress said she wasn't going to take the role with the ending that's in the book. So they had to rewrite it for the movie, and I'm glad they did, because I was so mad after I read this. I was really, really irritated, like probably irrationally so, because it's just a book, but I was like in a bad mood. So I gave this, wow, did I really give this 3.75? That's too high. Oh no, that's my rating in the circuit. I give this 2.0. I said GTFO with that ending. Like, there's no way, like, get out of here. That's not even. 2.0 with the ending. For overall, quality rating 2.25. Like I said, this was kind of a bloated book. Strength of characters 2.25. Plot 3. But it really could have been trimmed down. And yeah, I just freaking hated this ending so much. So yeah, 2.0. And I was real irritated. Part of me was wondering if I should finish the series, which I did. But not right away. After that, I needed something else. I was so mad. So I wanted like a domestic thriller, and this is nice and summery. And this is, if you look at the cover anyway, this is The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine. And I really did like this. So I read this from 612 to 615. Liz Constantine is actually a pen name for two sisters, Lynn Constantine and Valerie Constantine. So that's interesting. Published by HarperCollins in 2018. This is a domestic thriller. I paid $2 for this at Goodwill, and then it was free to listen to through Libby. So this is basically about kind of like the I'm gonna steal your life kind of thing. And that's basically the plot. So it's 393 pages, 12 hours on audio. I did listen to it at 2.25, so it went by faster. This is original. There's also a sequel and a prequel, and I do plan on listening to both of them. I don't have the physical. Kind of mad because I bought The Next Mrs. Parrish, which is a sequel. Well, I almost bought it. Okay, I didn't buy it. I had it in my cart for the Book Outlet $5.99 sale, and I took it out of my cart, and I kind of wish I didn't. But at that time, I hadn't read this, so I didn't want to buy a sequel to something if I didn't know I'd like the first. But I did like it. So, basically, this is about, there is this lady named Amber, and she wants to have this perfect life, but she, like, you know, she wants to be wealthy and affluent and all that, but she's not. And so she basically intercepts this very rich, prestigious family, inserts herself into their life with the plan of basically trying to take over, get the wife out of the picture, and have her become the next wife, the next Mrs. Parrish. And of course, it doesn't go as well as she planned. Now, I read The Housemaid a few years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, when I was really getting back into reading thrillers. And I heard after I read The Housemaid that Housemaid by Frida McFadden almost was like a copy and paste of this book, but that this book was done better. And I wish I would have read this one first, because I agree the plot line is very similar. Housemaid, it's a nanny that comes in and tries to steal her life. This one, she's not a nanny, but Milo's checking out my books back there. The plot is very similar, and there's even a scene in here where they go to an event that it's like the same venue and stuff that Frida had her characters go to, and she wrote that years later. And it's like, I don't know, it's weird. I'm not gonna say that she like stole the idea from this, but that theory is out there, and they do read oddly similar. Now this one they are also making a movie of, like they made a movie of The Housemaid, so we'll see how that differs. But yeah, I like the writing in this a lot better. It was more developed, I guess you would say. So this is told in both third-person POV and first-person POV, depending on the characters and whatnot. And I did like that. But like I said, I think I would like this more if I hadn't read The Housemaid first, even though this is better. I did enjoy this. This was just a fun, I'm going to steal your life. I want to be this person out on the water with my big fancy hat and sunglasses, like, and she'll do whatever she needs to do to make that happen. So it was fun. It was entertaining. I gave it 4.25 stars overall. 4.25 for quality of writing, 4.0 for strength of characters, and 4.5 for plot. So yeah, that was entertaining. And so this summer, I do want to listen to the sequel and the prequel. The sequel is what happens after this takes place, obviously. And then the prequel, I believe, is about the husband's upbringing. Okay. So after that, I was like, okay, I'm going to finish the Hannibal series because the last book is about Hannibal's background. And so I thought, maybe I'll get a little bit of redemption for the story, just learning his origins and where he came from and stuff. So I read Hannibal Rising. This is, like I said, the fourth and final book in the series. And this came out in 2006. So 7 years after the third one. Same kind of genre. I got this free at a little free library during that same week, and also listened to it free through Libby. And check out these old covers. And this is kind of, okay, I was going to show you guys this. I found this. This is something I got years ago, and I've researched it recently. I think the company is out of business, but the company was called The Hardbacker. And I had a couple of these. One I think is a mass market paperback size. One's a different one, but basically you can use it as a cover for any paperback this size, and you have a hardcover, and it's durable. It's if you want to be more discreet with what you're reading, you can. Let me just show you really quick. You just put the front cover through here, and then it can adjust based on size. I used this on the stand before back in the day. So it can hold all kinds of size books. And then you slide this. Sorry, I didn't do it in front of you, but you slide this on the back with that piece in it. And then you have a hardback book. So this was great because I did this for all of the series, and I brought this, brought them to the pool with me, and it gave me some extra protection, bringing it to the pool. So that's cool. But yeah, sadly, I don't think this company is around anymore. The cute little turtle, their Facebook hasn't been updated in like 10 years. And yeah. And I haven't seen anything else that's exactly like this out there, like on Etsy and stuff. But anyway, that's super cute. Back to the books. Yeah, final book in the series, 368 pages, 7 hours on audio. So I think this is the shortest one. And this is a prequel. So this tells Hannibal's origin story. So he basically grew up as a young child in World War II in Europe. And we follow him during that time as a kid and into his teenage years on the Eastern Front are all the ingredients to make a monster. The brilliant orphan child has demons lurking in the chambers of his memory, gouging him with fragments of his hideous past. So yeah, we follow him and the people in his life at that time, and basically how he became Hannibal Lecter, the infamous criminal. So I did like this. I'm glad that I read it because, yeah, it was cool to know more about Hannibal, but I was still mad about the third book. This one was different because it was narrated by the author. The audio was, and that was kind of cool. Like I said, it was interesting to learn his backstory. I did like, they had some historical references to World War II in here, and I did like that. But it was a little bit drawn out at times, but not as much as the third book. The first and second books were still my favorite. And then this one, and then, like I said, the third one, just, I wanted to burn it, throw it at the wall after I read it. But I gave this Hannibal 3.5 stars, Hannibal Rising. Overall, for everything, overall quality of writing, strength of characters, and plot, I gave it all 3.5 stars. So that concluded my Hannibal series. I'm glad I read it. I think I will keep them all. The only one that I would consider unhauling is the third one, but then I don't have the set. So probably keep them all for now. Okay, so the next book I read is Intercepts by T.J. Payne. I really had fun with this one. And this checked the box in my book bingo of a book with one-word title, Intercepts. I started this on the 17th and I finished it on the 18th. it was a fast read. Published by Crown in 2019. This is a horror book, as it says right here, a horror novel. And my husband got this for me on Amazon for Mother's Day. And then I did use an Audible credit to get it because I couldn't find it on Libby or Hoopla for the audio. So main characters in here are Joe Gerhard, who we follow, and then the Antennae for these guys. So I'll talk about that in a second. But it's 291 pages, 8.5 hours. This is the first book I've read by T.J. Payne, but I would read more after this. This takes place in rural West Virginia. For some reason, I thought it was taking place in Idaho when I got it, but I think I'm thinking of the book Idaho Fall, which I also haven't read. So I like this book. I like the ending, but the author does not spare your feelings. He doesn't care about your feelings. Your stuff's going to happen, and you're not going to like it, but that's okay. I was okay with it. So this copy, I wanted it for Mother's Day because it was like out of print on Amazon, but I guess that's because he got picked up by a different publisher. But this did have a bonus chapter at the end of the physical copy that wasn't on the audio. So from one of the characters, side characters' perspective. So basically in this book, we have Joe Gerhard, and he runs, well, he's like the supervisor of this top secret underground government-run facility out in rural West Virginia. And he doesn't know a whole lot of the backstory, but they have these people that they're called the intercepts or the Antennae, and they don't know their identity or anything, but they like shave them down, do all that, and then they expose them to sensory deprivation. And through that process and different factors that they put these intercepts in, the intercepts are basically able to use psychic abilities to see things that are happening outside of where they are. So, what do they call that? Intercept the sights and senses of anyone in the world. Dictators, terrorists, drug runners. With proper tuning, the inmates can tap into the mind of anyone, anywhere. So, there's a word for that. And I forget what it is, but that's what these people are being used for. And so he thinks, this is for the greater good. This is his job, whatever. Everything's fine until he's just making the world a better place. But then one day his ex-wife dies, so his teenage daughter comes to live with him. And it says he discovers that in the days leading up to his ex-wife's death, she had been having visions of a woman who looks very much like one of Joe's inmates. And now that his daughter moved into his house, she's beginning to have the visions of the woman too. Has Joe somehow played a role in turning the government's most sinister weapon against his own daughter? And most important, how far will he go to save her? So it's all great when they're doing work for, the better good, but what happens if they start intercepting your loved ones? This was really good. It was fun. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, the author does not spare your feelings. This is not going to be rosy and everything's fine kind of thing. But I thought it actually added to the tension in this story. Yeah, I really liked it. I gave it a 4.25 overall. But yeah, comparing this, this was way better than a Frida book. So I probably would bump this up to 4.5. I really liked it. 4.25 overall, quality of writing, all of that, except plot 4.5. I guess, I think the reason I didn't give it a 4.5 now that I think about it is I wanted to see more of the in the lab and behind the scenes and these government experiments and how they came to be in the backstory and all of that, where that is a part of the book, but a lot of the book takes place in Joe's life outside of work, and I wanted more of what was going on underground here. So Really good though. I did enjoy this and I would recommend it. And I've been wanting to read that for years. So, okay, let's keep going. I'm sorry. It's got to keep moving along here. The next one we have is Darcy Coates' book, Gallows Hill. I've kind of been in a Darcy Coates mood and have been reading, well, last month I read several of her books, but I think this is my only Darcy Coates for June, but I want to read at least one of her books every month, if not more. Started this on the 19th and I finished it on the 23rd. It did take me a little while to get through, which we'll talk about. But this is a cozy horror book, published in 2022 by Poison Pen. I don't know what I paid exactly for this on Amazon, but it was under $10. And then it was less than $3 on Audible when they were having a big sale. So this is about a haunted winery. It's 377 pages and 13 and a half hours on audio. This is the 12th Darcy Coates book that I've read. Well, 11 and then a very short audio. But yeah, her 12th work of hers. Okay, so this is about a haunted winery. Like I said, this, our female main character, she basically inherits it. She was estranged from her parents when she was like 8, and she doesn't really remember anything before then, but her parents own and lived at this winery. So they died unexpectedly and they left it to her. So she shows up and there's a house there for her to live in and like a fully functioning winery business. But the location that the winery is on is called Gallows Hill, where back in the day before it was like an incorporated town and it was kind of like martial law, like self-governed, that is where they would hang people for if they thought someone had done something wrong, they would hang them there. So that several people in the past had been hung there. There was an old tree there that the hanging tree that they cut down, and they actually made it into wine barrels. And so now, modern day, that wine from those like 4 wine barrels or however many there are from that tree is very expensive and very sought after. But then they also have like cheaper wine that they sell as well. She's not a wine drinker, but she she shows up there and all this scary stuff starts to happen. Along with the sprawling, dilapidated building, Margot is forced to come face to face with the horrors of the past and realize that she may be the next victim in a house that never rests. So obviously, yeah, there's some there was some trauma there, maybe some unrest, that things that never got settled. This book, I really liked it overall, but it was slow going at the beginning. It was a slow start. But then when it picked up, it really picked up and I liked the direction it went in. I wasn't really expecting, like I thought it would be more of like ghosts at a haunted winery, but that's not the direction it went in. And I really, really liked where she took it and when you found out what was going on. And I really liked the ending too. So this, it did get really intense and good once it picked up, but I feel like it was at least like halfway through the book, at least. I liked the physical better than the audio. Just wasn't really able to get into it the same way I was when I actually sat down and read it. It was genuinely creepy in parts. There were parts that were genuinely creepy, and I loved that. I think this would make a really good movie. I think they would trim out some of the stuff in the beginning, but yeah, this would make a really good movie. Really liked it. I love the way it wrapped up. I feel like Darcy Coates always is able to give you a satisfying ending with her stories. And this one, it didn't disappoint with that. I said Darcy Coates does it again. So 4.5 stars overall. Quality of writing, I gave it a 4.25 because of the pacing in the first half. The pacing was slow. Strength of characters, 4.25. Plot, I actually gave it a 5.0 for the plot. I just, like I said, I really like the direction that this story took, but it just needed to get there quicker. So, I did like this book. I would recommend it. I would say be patient. It will be worth it in the end. It was, yeah, it was worth it, but, it is gonna take a little bit to all come together. So I love me some Darcy Coates, and I really enjoyed this book, and I would recommend it. Gallows Hill. All right, the next book we have is a very short little book. I actually read this in one sitting, and that is Baby Cry Bridge by Ben Young. So this book, if you watched my book haul video, or actually just my unboxing of my of this book and Ride the Spiral, you know that the author gifted me this book. So thank you so much. If you ever watch this, Ben, I thank you. I really appreciate it. But yeah, like I said, I read this in one sitting. It's a little guy, 623 to 623. This was self-published by the author in 2025, and it's a horror book. So I only did the physical. I don't think that there's an audio of this, but this is available on Kindle Unlimited. And so this is just a short little guy. It's 47 pages, but you know, they're smaller pages, almost like a pamphlet size. And this is autographed. It says, "To Allie, may you never ever change." Ben Young. That's awesome. I can't say too much about this because of the size of it. So basically, these kids are at camp telling spooky campfire stories. And there's a legend about this bridge, Baby Cry Bridge. And the boys decide to go see it for themselves. Sneak out in the middle of the night and go see it for themselves. There's that story going on, as well as a side story of a lady who had a baby and basically going through severe postpartum depression. In fact, I believe it's considered postpartum psychosis. Yeah. So this, like I said, I can't say too much about it because it is a short little guy, but for the length of it, I really enjoyed it. 47 pages, took me about 20 minutes, maybe a half an hour to read it. So it's an easy read, but it was still entertaining despite the size. You know, short stories can be a struggle because you really can't get too granular with character development or, you know, plot intricacies, any of that, when you have that size constriction. And so that's why I don't tend to read a whole lot of short stories or novellas. But I think he did really good with this one. And let's see here. I wanted to read you a quote from page 4. Oh, first let me show you. I really liked how, okay, so like I said, the chapters are alternating perspectives. And when we have the perspectives of the kids at camp, we have all of the pages in that chapter. I don't know if you can really see it, but it's like a watermark of in the woods, kind of trees. And then when it's the other POV, it's like this other background. It's hard to see on here, but I thought that was really cool. It's like this background for that one. And then the other one is more forest. So that's cool. But I wanted to read you a quote here on page 4 that I absolutely loved this quote. As a reader, as a horror reader, you're always looking for something that's really going to creep you out, something that you're going to be like laying in bed down the road and just be like thinking about it and creeped out. And that's always kind of like the goal, at least for me. So listen to this. He said, he's talking about one of the boys wanting like a really good campfire story. And so it says, More than anything, he wanted a tail that would crawl to the back of his brain and lay eggs that hatched the next time it was too quiet in the house. I love that. I shared that quote with a friend who also likes horror, and yeah, more than anything, he wanted a tail that would crawl to the back of his brain and lay eggs that hatched the next time it was too quiet in the house. So something that's so scary that next time you're laying in bed quiet, maybe a month down the road, you're going to feel unsettled from that. And isn't that what we all want in a good horror story? So that was great. I really enjoyed this. I'm just so grateful to have a copy from the author. I really enjoyed it, but I wanted more. You know, it's a little itty bitty guy. Of course, I would have liked to go into more details on this stuff. Also, the ending was kind of ambiguous, but it points towards something, and I actually really like that. What book did I just, I just finished a book that had another like ambiguous ending, but kind of feels like you're pointing in one direction, but it's up to the reader to really like decide through their own imagination how things turned out. That's kind of how this was, and I actually really like that. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be like that. I feel like it was kind of open for interpretation, but yeah. Okay, so I gave this a 4.25 overall because of the size. But quality of writing, 4.5. Strength of characters, 4.5. I said there was the image of the mother in her postpartum psychosis that I thought was very descriptive and well done in such a short book. That gave it a 4.5 for strength of characters, and a plot 4.25. And there is a not a content warning, but at the end of the book there's an author's note where it does have a hotline that people can call for postpartum support, an international hotline. So I always like when authors, take care to do something like that. And you have his picture back here. If you guys don't know Ben Young, I have talked about his books a lot on this channel, but his wife is Lauren, and they have a channel called The Youngs and the Restless. And it's a very fun bookish channel. I highly recommend that you go check it out. That's how I found him and his books. And he is an author that I want to read to zero. And I think we're going to continue to see a lot of good stuff from him. So let's move on here. The next book that I have is Night Watching by Tracy Sierra. And this was a good book too. I started this on the 23rd and I finished it on the 25th. This was published by Penguin Books in 2024. It is her debut novel. This is I found it in the horror section of Barnes & Noble, but I'd say it's more horror thriller. It's like horror adjacent. We'll say that. I did kind of pay a lot for this at Barnes & Noble. I paid $16.37 back in February for this, and then it was free to listen to through Libby. So this is about a mother who's trapped in her house with her kids, and there's an intruder in the house. 351 pages, 10 hours. This is her debut novel. She also wrote Warning Signs, which is her new book that came out this year, which I do own and want to read. So this mother she's in her house home alone with her kids, her two young kids. And of course there's a snowstorm, isolated setting. They're kind of snowed in. And in the middle of the night, there's an intruder in her house. So they have to survive that. In suffocating darkness, the mother struggles to remain calm to plan. At first she doesn't know who this person is, but she thinks that he looks vaguely familiar, so she's trying to place, where do I know him from? And eventually she does remember, but I really don't want to give too much of this book away. I really did like it, but I thought that the whole book would be in this one closed room, isolated setting, and it wasn't. And I wanted more of that. So about halfway through the book, we are introduced to a different setting, and I didn't want that as much. I wanted more of this, but that did kind of make you question things more. So one thing I noticed about this book is that none of the characters have names. There's the mother, and then there's like the little boy and the little girl and the husband. They're basically all just called that. The intruder, they do have kind of a nickname for him. But that's it. There's no names, surnames, none of that. It's just the mother, the children. And I think at first I was like, that's kind of weird, but I think I actually like that. Obviously it was intentional. And I think what she was trying to do was make it more relatable. Like, it's not Bobby and Sally, you know, that are stuck with their mom. Could be anyone. It could be you and your kids. So I think she was trying to make it more personal to the reader in a way, which without names, it doesn't sound like it would be, but it worked. It did work. And I liked that. So, this was, actually a Jimmy Fallon book club pick. And, like I said, it was a little slow in the middle, but it did have a very satisfying ending. I did like the ending. This takes place during and after COVID. And so you have a lot of that, stuff going on that we dealt with that, you know, it kind of brings you back to that time and all of the constraints and how that kind of affected people, and the effects on the mother. And, you know, so parts of this story, when she's like having flashbacks and stuff, it makes you, I wrote down that it was a portrayal of a woman's experience in a man's world. So just little things that women experience that men generally don't get. Like, you know, why do we take the elevator instead of the stairs? Because we don't want to get assaulted on the stairs. Why is it that women are always, or young girls are always told, oh, you need to smile more, just smile? Like, you don't hear that stuff said to men generally, stuff like that. And so I thought she did a really good job kind of explaining the feelings of those little differences that we experience as women that men are not as exposed to, that they are usually the perpetrators of. I thought that was done really well in this book. So it was enjoyable. It was intense. I definitely will read more of her. But I wanted more of, like I said, I wanted like the whole book to take place here, but I think a lot of people probably would have got bored with that. So I did really like this. I gave it 4 stars. I probably could have gave it 4.5, but 4.25. Anyway, 4.5, 4 stars overall. Quality of writing, strength of characters, and the plot 4.25. I did enjoy this and I would recommend it. Okay, we only have 2 more books here. I'm sorry this is going so long. But thanks for hanging around if you're still hanging with me. I need to do this twice a month at least. This is my next book I read, Guess Again by Charlie Donnelly. And this is his most recent release. It just came out in the paperback sprayed edges version in May. And so I was waiting to read it till I could get my hands on this. And yeah, I had a lot of fun reading this. 625 to 628, published by Kensington in 2025. And this is a thriller. And I paid full price for this because I wanted this edition. It was $20 on Amazon, and I bought it on Audible a while ago for like under $10. But I already talked about this when I hauled it, but I just love this. You have the water droplets are textured on here, and then you have the sprayed edges here that says, so it's Guess Again, your life may depend on it. And so that was really fun, especially as you're like reading through it, you know, but you can kind of see how far you are from that. It's really fun. And I love these like floppy paperback style of his books. Almost all of his books I have are like this, except I do have one mass market paperback. But anyway, I love these big floppy ones. So this is about Ethan Hall, who returns to law enforcement to solve a crime. I did pre-order this, like, I don't know, last January or something, and then it came, like I said, in May. It's 360 pages or 9 hours on audio. This is the 5th Charlie Donnelly book that I've read, and I do want to read him to zero this year. He's got a new book that comes out in January. I think it's January 26th of 2027. I believe it's called Behind Every Face. You can pre-order it now on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and it's hardback sprayed edges. But anyway, I have 4 books left of his to read to zero before that comes out. So I think that's totally doable. 6 months to read 4 more of his books. His books are very fast-paced. You can get through them really quick. Most of them have really short chapters, and that helps me because one more chapter, when they're only a couple pages long. I think this might be my favorite Charlie Donnelly book to date. So basically, this is about a guy named Ethan Hall. He used to be a detective in law enforcement, and he had 100% solve rate for his cases. All his cases he solved. But he actually was dealing with some really dark stuff, like crimes against children and that kind of stuff. And it just took a toll on him, like it would anyone. And he decided, you know, by the time I'm seeing this stuff, it's usually too late for the kids. And it's just like catching the bad guy. I want to do something to help people while they're still alive. So he went back to med school and he became a doctor. And now he works in the ER. And he's really like happy with that because now he really feels like he doesn't have all that draining negative stuff from his previous job. And he likes that he can save people. So he's doing his thing, working in the ER. His old partner comes to him, who's now terminally ill, and says, I've got this one case that I've never been able to solve from 10 years ago of this missing girl. Can you please help us solve this? And so he needs to return to the haunting work he left behind and solve what happened to Callie, the missing girl, once and for all. And then while this is all happening, he ends up, he has this tie through a different case to someone who's in prison who he was only convicted of killing one person, but they believe that he was a serial unaliver back in the 90s, like the mid to late 90s. He ends up basically helping this cop, giving him context clues and stuff. Well, just different clues to help the cop find this missing girl. There's no way that he could have been involved because he was a serial killer. He was arrested in the 90s. The girl went missing in 2015. But it reminded me of Hannibal Lecter, the way, or Silence of the Lambs, whatever, the way that the law enforcement would come to the imprisoned serial killer to help them find someone, solve a crime, that kind of thing. I mean, yeah, it was kind of like he pulled that from Silence of the Lambs. But even with that, I really enjoyed this book. Yeah, it was really good. I gave it a 4.5 star rating overall, which I feel like I've rated some of his other books higher, but I think I like this one the best. 4.5 overall, 4.75 for quality, and 4.5 for strength of characters and plot. This did have a huge cliffhanger at the end, and he definitely left it open for a sequel. And apparently, because I follow him on Facebook, he said that he's been getting a lot of requests for a sequel and that he is open to doing it. So we might get one of those in a couple years, and then I might have to go back and reread this one. But yeah, I think this is a great read for the summer. You can't go wrong with Charlie Donnelly. And yeah, he did it again. Guess again. Okay, one more book to talk about. So it was getting to be towards the end of the month, because June only had 30 days. 6/28, I was at 79 books, and I thought I really want to finish June with 80 books. So I need to find a book that's short, quick read. So I found a book that was short, but very heavy on the content, and that is Night by Elie Wiesel. I'm not sure how you say his last name. But yeah, this was last book I read of the month. This was a book bingo box I was able to check, was a book written by a Nobel laureate, basically someone that has won a Nobel Prize, and he won a Nobel Prize for this book. So I started it on 6/28 and I finished it on 6/29. Spending a lot of time hanging out with my dog. She had just had surgery actually a week ago today, and it's going to be, she's doing great, but it is going to be a big recovery process for her. She tore her ACL and her meniscus, so it's like 12-week full recovery, and we're on week 1, so she's still pretty restricted. And so I was spending a lot of time just like hanging out with her, cuddling with her, and reading. And so I read Guess Again, and then I read this when I was sitting with her. This was actually first published in 1958, and this version that I have was 2006 by, I don't know how you say the name of the publishing company. It almost looks French, which makes sense because this was translated from French by his wife. So this is a memoir, a nonfiction book, and I'm so happy that I read a nonfiction and I really enjoyed it. It was less than $10 when I got it used at a local bookstore, and it was free to listen to on Libby. So this is about someone's survival in World War II concentration camps as a youth. True story. 120 pages, 4 hours on audio. I did listen to it free on Libby as well. This book doesn't really have chapter breaks, but I was able to follow along easy enough the way it was broken down in Libby. This is very powerful, poignant, unforgettable. So yeah, this is about the author. He was a Jew in Germany in World War II, and his family went through the worst of it. So he talks about how at first, like earlier on in the war, they didn't think it would be that bad. It's not going to affect them. You know, this isn't really a problem for us. Then all the Jews were moved into the ghetto, a designated area, or ghettos, designated areas where only they could live. And then they weren't allowed to leave. They weren't allowed to go out at night. They weren't allowed to do this, that, and, you know, started to get more and more restrictive, but still like, it's fine. Like nothing's going to happen to us kind of thing until it does, until the cattle cars come and take them. And so he's taken, they're all taken, shoved into these cattle cars, horrible conditions, and they're taken to concentration camps. And he's separated from most of his family except his dad. He is able to stay with his dad. I might be giving too much away here. I might need to be a little bit more vague. He does go to Auschwitz, which was like, you know, the worst of the worst, but he also is at other locations throughout his imprisonment, and he's a teenage boy. So how old is he? Is he like, I don't know how old he was, but he was a teenager. So very impressionable age anyway, and to see some of these atrocities and the stuff he had to go through and witness, it's just so horrible and sad, and it's heartbreaking that this stuff actually can and did happen in this world that we live in. You know, this is real life horror. And yeah, it was definitely not an easy read. Like, oh, I'm just going to go whip through 120 pages. It didn't really turn out like that because it was very heavy and emotional. And Oh man, this is a story I think I'm gonna remember forever. And I'm late to the game reading it. I think a lot of people read it in high school, which is great. I think that this should be something that everyone has to read, but um I guess this is a first in a series. He has 3 books, Night, Dawn, and Day, I think are the other ones. But this is the first biography I've read in years. I don't read much nonfiction, and I definitely don't read very many biographies, but I'm so glad that I did. So my friend recommended this to me, and I'm so grateful that she did. She usually reads she reads a lot more nonfiction than I do, and so she recommended a couple good ones. And I'm gonna try to read like one nonfiction book a month going forward, just to kind of expand my horizons. Um, and I think I like ones that are, yeah, based on people's true life events. Not like necessarily self-help books, but like, yeah, stories of people's lives. So, um, I gave this five stars, obviously. Overall, quality of writing, strength of characters, and plot. Now, with the quality of writing, the prose in here, it's great. It's like poetic at times, the way it reads. And yeah, it is translated, but yeah, the writing is very lyrical, which just kind of adds to the tenderness of the story. And I highly recommend this. You probably have to be in the right headspace. You know, this is not a short little popcorn read, but if you want to read something about an important time in history and someone who lived through it to tell about it, this is it right here, Night. So highly recommend that one. So yeah, I'm sorry that took us over an hour, but that was all of the books that I read in June 2026. Let me know if you guys have read any of these, what your thoughts on them are. I might do, there is a like a mid-year reading, um I don't know what you call it, but like there's a video that people are doing with like prompts of mid-year stuff. So I might try to do that. That did sound fun. And yeah, so far I'm on my second book this month. First one was a DNF. Second one I really enjoyed. Actually, I'm about to start my third. So I'll try and update you guys maybe mid-month July and not wait till we have to talk about stuff for an hour-long video. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know in the comments what you are reading, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye, guys.